It's Dave Nemo Weekends with Jimmy Mack.
Jimmy ain't here.
And Lindsay Lawler.
I'm trying to get back to Texas. You know I'm trying to get back home. Here we go.
As you know by now, and I can't remember, maybe Andre remembers. Andre, how many books are in the Sleeper Cab library right now?
Whew, that's a hard question to ask right now.
He said the number the other day, and Greg, do you know? Do you remember?
I think it's getting close up there as much as Jim reads. That's Jimmy Mack and Dave Nemo and Greg Thompson. We're here on Dave Nemo Weekends. We're sitting in for Jimmy Mack, and as much as Jimmy reads, Dave, it's getting close to the level of Library of Congress, the number of books that are in there, right?
Yeah. And we are adding one here this morning to the Sleeper Cab library called Iron Dad, a cancer survivor's story of discovering strength, life, and love through fatherhood. And boy, what a great combination of direction and perspective that Paul Weigel is joining us here this morning to talk about. 10-year cancer survivor. The book is out. Paul, good morning. Happy Father's Day.
Dave, good morning. Greg, good morning. Happy Father's Day to you.
It is great to have you with us, and being in the Sleeper Cab Library is an honored position because so many great authors have joined the library since Jim put it together, and we've got a lot of folks out here who really recommend books and things like that as well. So the Iron Dad, you don't even have to be a Ironman triathlete to be an Iron Dad in the case of surviving cancer like that. But the opening of the book has a beautiful sets a beautiful scene about you and your daughter Josie riding the Great Alaskan Railroad. You're on a trip of a lifetime. You're going to Denali and then Anchorage, Alaska, and this is the trip celebrating being 10 years cancer-free. One of the things that I mentioned a little bit earlier on the program is the fact that colorectal cancer, and you can have colon or rectal cancer, and together they're colorectal. And
exactly.
It's the number 50, and Greg, you have a story about this too, but the number 50 years old is the new marker now. It's the leading cause of cancer death in men and the second in women who are under 50 years old. So all of these things that we think, that's when I get to be an old man, I'll worry about that. Not so much anymore, huh, Paul? And you were as surprised as anybody.
I was. It's funny. Here I am now at 54, and to be thinking, wow, 50 is that threshold. And I still feel, I know like all of us, we feel as young as we want to be. But, when actually I started having symptoms of major abdominal symptoms and issues probably in my late 30s and early 40s. And as my symptoms progressed and got worse and worse, I finally got into a doctor. But that's when I found out at 43 that I had stage 3 colorectal cancer and a tumor the size of a lemon in the middle of my abdomen.
Wow.
Indeed, you took the words right out of my mouth. And so you just went from 0 to 3, without any warning whatsoever, except that you were feeling bad, right?
Well, this interesting thing about colorectal cancer is so many times it's either very few symptoms or things get very few symptoms, or you've got a few, or then you get to the point like I was. I had small symptoms. I had things like, I used to be able to eat pizza all the time. And then all of a sudden one day my GI system changed and pizza no longer liked me. And then after a few years, I occasionally would run into a drop of blood when I went to the bathroom. Talked with my doctor about that. He assumed it was hemorrhoids and just moved on. So I had small, teeny tiny little things. And it wasn't until I almost had to have a flight diverted when I was going back and forth from Seattle to Chicago. That's when things got so extreme that I finally had the symptoms enough to finally get tested.
Wow.
And you got no real direction or, information from the doctors that you had been going to pretty much all your life, right?
That is totally true. I had gone into multiple physicians. Certainly my I was kind of a surprised person where, in your late 30s and early 40s, you don't tend to go into the doctor, or I certainly didn't. But I tried to be proactive where I could. And when I went and talked to my doctors and wrote down some of these symptoms and even mentioned it, they just blew it off because they didn't think about the fact that a young, healthy person might be incredibly sick.
Yeah, because Paul, you know this too. There are all kinds of over-the-counter remedies for all of the symptoms that you were suffering, and like you say, it wasn't that much for a long time, and then it got to be too much. And when it got to be too much, it already advanced to stage 3. There are only 4 stages, so that is a wake-up call and then some. But our guts just don't like what we put in our mouths anymore. And we talk privately behind the scenes here about these numbers about, being checked at 45 now is the new number that we're looking at. It's younger and younger. Insurance companies don't like that because it means more and more, coverage for younger and younger people, which means more and more people. So you got that going on that side of the equation. But it's just like, well, okay, all of a sudden your gut don't like pizza, and that happens to people all the time. And you don't think anything of it. We've kind of normalized stomach discomfort, haven't we?
Right. We certainly have. And, you mentioned, Dave, with your sense of we're putting crap into our bodies all the time. And that's even if we choose to eat healthy. I mean, the number of processed and just chemicals that we are putting into our body that we think are safe, we don't know. And we're going to be learning more and more in the next 20 plus years about what is causing some of this. But certainly you say so many different over-the-counter remedies that we can be addressing, but it's when we start connecting those things back and forth. I had IBS, so occasionally I would take Imodium. I had an upset stomach, so I would eat Tums. Had I really looked at those things together, and also mentioned the blood, I took Preparation H. So, I mean, if I started putting together a list of the symptoms, I might have realized that the whole was much bigger than just those individual parts.
Yeah, the duct tape and Elmer's glue solutions to all of our problems there over again on the counter, and it really masks a lot of things. You know what? We're going to really do a gear shift here, Paul. We're going to go into the break. When we come back, let's switch gears, and we'll get back to colorectal cancer, but let's talk about being an Ironman, because I think our listeners are fascinated by that. I sure am.
Oh, yeah.
And you're a 6-time Ironman triathlete. We'll be right back with Paul Weigel. It's easier to wait, to let someone else take the lead. But that's not the way at Volvo Trucks. Volvo saw the opportunity for a safer, more fuel-efficient, more driver-focused solution, so they charged ahead, creating the truck of tomorrow today. Introducing the all-new Volvo VNL, designed to change everything. See it now at volvotrucks.us.
You don't put a mechanic under your hood who doesn't know rigs, and you don't haul loads for a partner who doesn't understand freight. So why are you trusting your finances to folks who don't know trucking? If you want to run like a business, then ride with taxesfortruckers.com. You know the road, they know the books. It's a one-stop shop for financial pomp. They lift you up, take a look underneath, and get you rolling again with full-service accounting and tax services, all the while consulting with you. Call 888-TAX, the number 4, TRK, 401k to stop overpaying taxes today. Taxesfortruckers.com.
The Ultra One loyalty program at TA Petro and TA Express has been simplified. They heard you. You wanted more attainable rewards, so they reduced the number of gears in the program and lowered gallon minimums. So now you can get to 4 times the points, showers, meals, or parking even faster. Get more details at ta-petro.com/Ultra1. ta-petro.com/Ultra1. Paul Weigel is with us. The book on the nightstand here this morning in the Sleeper Cab Library here at Radio Nemo is Iron Dad, a cancer survivor's story of discovering strength, life, and love through fatherhood. And it's interesting, Paul, that the title doesn't describe what iron means here, so we don't think Ironman in terms of the triathlete experience. That's pretty cool that you don't billboard that right there on the cover of the book. But we're going to talk about it right now if we can.
Absolutely, happy to.
So,
yes,
what makes you want to do something as crazy as this? Because Andre, you are you there by a microphone? He is not. He told me, I remembered this, but he reminded me this morning that when you guys do the swimming, the biking, and the running, it's miles and miles and some more miles, and you've done this 6 times, so you got to be crazy. So
following up a swim with a marathon and then a long bike ride, that's something.
But you spent your whole life outdoors, Pacific Northwest, hunting, fishing, exploring Mount Rainier, St. Helens, Adams. So you're in Arizona now, but I guess you were kind of predisposed for the Ironman triathletes. But I'm taking it, though, that the Ironman experience comes after the discovery of the cancer.
It does. Yeah. You are right. I have been an outdoorsy person, certainly loved being up in the Pacific Northwest and having the chance to see so many mountains and have so many different experiences. But the Ironman part really kicked in after being sick to a certain degree because it is so crazy, because it is so ridiculously hard. I mean, an Ironman, you mentioned it being a lot of miles. It is a 2.5-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and then a marathon. And when I look and I say, you know what, in the grand scheme of things, I'm going to beat cancer. But just as much to prove to everybody that I am powerful and strong and really able to do anything, I had set this goal of doing an Ironman because I wanted a story for my daughter to see and appreciate. When I first got diagnosed with being sick with colorectal cancer, my numbers weren't great, and I knew I had a long fight ahead of me. So there was a part that I wanted her to have a lasting legacy or a lasting memory with me of being able to do something absolutely amazing and incredible. And I've got this just wonderful picture of me holding her when she's 4 years old and just beaming. And that forever describes my legacy. And I continue to try and go back to that because, wow, what a great experience. And especially when you finish the race and they say, you are an Ironman. It is the most amazing 2 seconds you'll ever experience.
Wow, that is something. That is something. Maybe I'll try to be an iron old man, Greg.
I will let you do that. And now, Paul, I want to ask you. So, I'm sure there are moments, particularly in that first Ironman, when now you've done all the training, you've prepared, but there are moments when your mind and body are not agreeing with each other. So what kept you going on the 112 mile bike? I would think on that marathon, take us through that. Were there moments when you thought, your body's kind of arguing with your mind?
Oh, great question, Greg. Absolutely. As you get through a race, it really becomes a mind game. It becomes a thought process of how much time is left in the race, how many miles do you have to go, what else can possibly go wrong with my body while I'm out there. In addition to my cancer, I've actually now had both my hips replaced, so we can certainly say I'm stubborn. So maybe I'm pushing through my body a little bit too much. But where you're talking about how do you get through it, I think for all of us there is the power of perseverance, the power of looking and saying, I've got this goal and I know that when I get through it, I'm going to be a better, stronger person. That has been the case for me so many different times where the level of exhaustion, I can't even think, or I've got blisters, or it is just, I am so tired that thinking about walking 20 more steps seems impossible. But I've had this belief forever. If you believe in the impossible, the incredible can come true. And when you get this done, what's going to be that next wonderful experience you're going to be able to have? And then there's also the part of just waiting to see my kid at the finish line and to be able to see the look in her eyes and the beam and that connection that I've had with her. Dave, you mentioned iron. Iron has got a lot of different phrases to it, or metaphors to it. It's powerful and it's strong. And for her to look at me and think about me as this powerful, strong dad every day, especially during the races, is really powerful and meaningful.
It's kind of funny you should mention that because one of the things we're doing on this Father's Day weekend is asking questions about 3 different colognes and then having the drivers put in their wild card. So I'm going to ask you right now, okay, thumbs up or thumbs down on these 3, right? Old Spice.
When I was 13, yes. Thumbs up.
Brute.
Thumbs down.
When most people are doing thumbs down on Brute, and I really like Brute. English Leather.
Oh. If I'm going to get 20 years ago, if I were to be going to a cigar bar, I might put on some English Leather, but I'm not so sure as much now. Might cause my sinuses some issues.
Oh, okay. And do you have a wild card of your own to throw in?
Oh, that is funny. You know what? As you're asking me, my go-to for forever, I haven't used it as much recently, was electric shave. I just love the smell putting it on and that tingle right before starting things up. That was my go-to.
That is something. Yeah. There was one called Iron, I-R-O-N. And yesterday when we were talking about the cologne, and I knew we were going to talk about you, and I wanted to ask you if you had ever heard of Iron Cologne. I don't know if they I should have looked it up to see if they still make it. I think you can still find it, but I liked it. It was good. Anyway.
Well, I have a marketing idea, Paul. If you run another Ironman, you should tell the organizers that folks that cross the finish line can get a bottle of that Iron Cologne.
I was just thinking that, I'll talk to the race organizers, or maybe I can get them to be a sponsor for me as I'm moving ahead. Because, being out there, being a triathlete is not cheap. That's for sure.
Ah, there you go. Because it's BYOB, right? Bring your own bicycle.
It is BYO. Yes, it's bring your own bicycle and lots of different things. But
How many bikes? Do you have a collection of bikes?
I do. I just got rid of a couple. I donated a couple, so I've got my road bike, my tri bike, my mountain bike. This is funny. I only have 3 bikes right now. But the ironic part is, I wouldn't consider myself to be out there all the time riding, exercising. I like short bursts. I like having a road bike that allows me to ride on the streets and a mountain bike that allows me to go up into the hills a little bit, and then my triathlon bike for bigger things. So I do have a collection, but it's not that I'm I sound like an addict. Oh my gosh.
Hey,
You
Paul.
know, hey, there's an app for that. Paul Weigel says
Right.
there's a bike for that.
Right. Hey, Paul, I want
That
to
is
ask
true.
you a question. I wanted to ask you a question about your book. Writing a book, and I know a couple of authors, and I've toyed with it myself. I was a sports writer for about 10 years. Writing a book is its own mental triathlon in its own way. What has been the most rewarding part of getting your book finished, out, and in the world?
That is such a great question. Writing a book and the experience now has just been so incredible. It certainly was amazingly cathartic to go back and look through my life and chronicle it and process through some things. But as I've gone through and had some great experiences and get a chance to talk with different people, the biggest return and momentum that I've had is knowing it's 2 parts. One is spending time with my daughter, and she's now 14, and she still likes me, and she still likes hanging out with me and hearing my story and being part of it. We actually did an interview with ABC News on Friday, and she was interviewing with the host just as much as I was. And so to see that energy from her has been great. But just as much, it's some of that conversation we had at the start, and that is every time we talk about colorectal cancer, and every time we talk about, hey, if you've got small symptoms up front, talk to your doctor. You're the one who knows about your health. And I'm starting to hear more and more people tell me, hey, I went and I talked to my doctor, and it turned out I had a couple polyps during my colonoscopy, and I'm now not going to get cancer. That is so incredibly cool and powerful to know that my story and my experience will make a difference for others moving in the future.
And we are honored to be able to be part of that in terms of getting the word out. If you are 45 years old, now is the time to get a colonoscopy. And start off there. If it's nothing, wonderful. If it is, you probably will wind up like Paul and catching it in time enough. But don't wait. And have what happened to Paul happen to you, and start off with stage 3. Start with stage 1, and you'll be a lot better off, I think. Paul, can't thank
Start
you
with
enough.
nothing,
Yes, Paul, thank you so much for taking time out on this Father's Day to be with you, be with us. Best to Josie, and the book is Ironman, and it is on the nightstand in the Sleeper Cab Library. Iron Dad, a cancer survivor's story of discovering strength, life, and love through fatherhood.